McDonald's or Burger King? A question that tends to come up more often than you'd expect. It's not because I'm planning a meal or looking for recommendations. It's a question I ask because I want to better understand my friends, their views and their tastes. But as a friend, it would be a slap in the face if someone said that they don't like meat and I ignored their dietary preferences by launching at them a quarter pounder, 2 number 9s, a number 9 large, a number 6 with extra dip, a number 7, 2 number 45s, 1 with cheese, and a large soda. I can't say I expected to start a Fallout video talking about burgers, or to use a San Andreas meme in 2026, but let's get to the meat of the video. When I decide on a topic to cover, I try to avoid topics that have been covered too thoroughly already, or things that seem viral at the time. I'll talk about things that I'm passionate about, something I can be constructively critical of, or about things where I think I can bring something fresh to the table. While I'm not a hardcore ride or die fan of Fallout, it's a franchise I have many hundreds of hours in over the decade I've been playing it. I just don't think that Fallout 4 is a particularly good role-playing game, maybe not even a good game overall. I'll start with the roleplay aspect and then go on to systems and mechanics after. When I think of a good role-playing game, I think of the Baldur's Gate series, something where I can be who or whatever I want. I can act in any number of ways, with the world and its inhabitants reacting to my character and the actions that I've taken, regardless of the honeyed words that I whisper in their ear. I should be able to take a character, imprint myself onto them as much as I imprint them onto myself. That actually sounds insanely pretentious, so let me clear it up a bit. I want my thoughts in that moment to be of how they impact my character and the world around them, and not to be about min-maxing or whatever benefits me, the player, the most, due to my choices being ultimately superficial. Unfortunately, to me, superficiality is the core of Fallout 4. While it's not essential for an RPG, many of them start off as a pure blank slate, a useless chunk of rock in which we carve our own creature, be it a noble, an honor-bound scallywag, or just a pure murder hobo. This allows the player to ally with whoever they want, to play whichever way they desire. Fallout 4 starts as a married parent of one, either a decorated veteran of the US Army or a lawyer with a degree from the Suffolk County School of Law. While this isn't an issue in and of itself, having such a predefined character can very easily lead into ludonarrative dissonance, which, again, isn't an intrinsic issue. Given that that term originates from a blog about Bioshock, it seems like a good way to explain what I mean. Clint Hocking, the name behind the term, critiqued about the game that Bioshock seems to suffer from a powerful dissonance between what it is about as a game and what it is about as a story. By throwing the narrative and ludic elements, that being the gameplay elements, of the work into opposition, the game seems to openly mock the player for having believed in the fiction of the game at all. The leveraging of the game's narrative structure against its ludic structure all but destroys the player's ability to feel connected to either, forcing the player to either abandon the game in protest or simply accept that the game cannot be enjoyed as both a game and a story. Bioshock is a game about the relationship between freedom and power. It is at once, and among other things, an examination and a criticism of Randian objectivism. It says rather explicitly that the notion that rational self-interest is moral or good is a trap, and that the power we derive from complete and unchecked freedom necessarily corrupts and ultimately destroys us. Overall, from what I've read of the blog, I disagree with his views, but that's something I'd leave for if I ever decide to cover Bioshock. To be fair, maybe I've just not read enough to have a fair, informed view on it. Anywho, back to quoting him so I can explain my opinion in regards to Fallout 4, the game I'm supposed to be covering, despite the fact I think a San Andreas reference has taken up more time so far. Hocking deliberates over how the game offers the player two contracts. The ludic contract of seek power and you will progress, and the narrative contract of help Atlas and you will progress. He sees the reward of Adam, essentially the XP mechanic of the game, being larger as a result of harvesting the Little Sisters, a larger upfront sum being his view of the game's philosophical stance that it's best if I do what's best for me without consideration for others. However, he sees that the contract of help Atlas and you will progress being fundamentally opposed to his self-interest or free will. Atlas as a character is against Andrew Ryan, the selfish, Randian dictator of Rapture, who Hocking feels aligned with by also agreeing to Rand's principles of objectivism. Yet, he doesn't have a choice in regards to the proposition of helping Atlas. In order to progress in the game, the player must follow Atlas's commands. His criticism is about how, in the game's mechanics, I am offered the freedom to choose to adopt an objectivist approach, but I also have the freedom to reject that approach and to rescue the Little Sisters, even though it is not in my own net best interest to do so. While, in the game's fiction, I do not have that freedom to choose between helping Atlas or not. If I accept to adopt an objectivist approach, I can harvest Little Sisters. If I reject that approach, I can rescue them. Under the story, if I reject an objectivist approach, I can help Atlas and oppose Ryan, and if I choose to adopt an objectivist approach, well, too bad. The ways that this ties into Fallout 4 are too numerous for me to list all, but the main ones being philosophical and ideological. I'm a loving, married parent of a baby. I'm planning to celebrate Halloween with my beloved partner and the baby that I supposedly care so much about. My world, the life I've known, all my conscious existence, gets thrown into anarchy. And within 5 minutes, I go from getting ready for a picnic to being an ice cube in an underground bunker. I see my husband get shot and my baby gets stolen, and 5 minutes later, I'm traversing an irradiated hellscape to get that sweet robot minge as I chat up the singer of a bar. Even if I follow the path the game has set out for me, I leave the vault, I go to my home, I speak to my robot butler who points me in the direction of the nearest town. I approach, see a gunfight I have nothing to do with, and get railroaded into saving a group of strangers that I don't know. I save that group, they walk back to the street I lived on, and I am forced to go help more people that I don't know, to give the world hope that a group of people that I'm not a member of are still out there offering aid. If I don't care that another settlement needs our help, I can reject Preston, but that's just superficial because I can't get my own street as a settlement until I agree to help that settlement. Not to mention that I have to go show this settlement that the Minutemen are still around and giving support, despite the fact that I'm not a member of the Minutemen. They quite literally sent a fish out of water instead of a Minuteman.
I've had word from a settlement asking for help. There's still hope in there are Minutemen out there somewhere. The only chance to start rebuilding the Minutemen is to show people that they can count on us when they need us. Trouble is, I've got my hands full here. Do you think you could go help out the settlement?
What kind of help do they need?
Sounded like the usual. Raiders. You'll have to get all the details when you talk to them.
I can't help. Right now.
That's your call. I hope you change your mind.
Hey.
Hey, you ready to help out? I've had word from a settlement asking for help. The only chance. Trouble is.
I'd be glad to.
That's fantastic. The Minutemen could use more people like you. By the way, if you want to help out around here at all, talk to Sturgis. I'm sure he'd be glad for all the help he can get.
Imagine calling a boiler repairman, and to make sure you know that the boiler repairmen are still out there, they send a fucking gardener. Your character can absolutely detest synths, while still smashing roboticity. And no matter your character's philosophies and ideals, be them inherited from yourself as a player, or just through role-playing, you basically get nothing more than a character saying, "I disapprove of your actions" for 90% of the game. New Vegas offers fair and nuanced discussion on philosophical and moral stances, while allowing a wildcard ending where you're not forced to ally or align yourself with any faction or character other than Yes Man. That's not to say that New Vegas doesn't share many of the same constraints as Fallout 4, but we're at least a blank slate that isn't forced into accepting a vigilante-style eye for an eye retribution. Benny tries to kill you, and you're still able to let him run away to live. Granted, he does then run into the Legion fort, and you have to decide which way he dies, or try to free him and become vilified by Caesar's Legion, but you get the option to avoid murder as retribution. New Vegas lets you change your views and ideals to better fit in the world you're living in, while Fallout 4 makes you change the world to better fit the views and ideals you hold. You can take Hoover Dam for the NCR, a governing body that forces itself on the region, allows for widespread hunger and destitution in order to maintain an infrastructure regardless of how frail it might be. You could take the dam for the Legion, who force assimilation, slavery, and antiquated gender roles, but provide food and security to all that join. Or you could reject both of those and put the fate of New Vegas into the hands of the people of New Vegas instead. I truly believe I could walk from one side of New Vegas to the other, singing along to the in-game radio, and I would be immersed in a way that I can't find myself in Fallout 4. If we look at Fallout 4 comparatively against Fallout 3, the story is rather similar, and that's actually good in this case, as it lets me explain why I feel it doesn't work in Fallout 4. 4 starts with the war never changes speech, which I personally find non-committal, pseudo-intellectual nothingness. Being a speech Nate is planning to give at the Veterans Hall, it describes the world they're currently living in, the pre-apocalyptic America. By the time you actually get to play the game, instead of being stuck inside an interactive tutorial, that world is long gone and alien compared to the world we have to struggle to survive in. If done differently, I think it could actually be a decent juxtaposition of the different worlds the character will have to live through. It could be a statement, an indictment, or, if done better, a resigned acceptance that you can't change the world, you can only try to survive. Just telling me that the world sucks and you can't do anything about it, to then throw me in a world where everything sucks and I can't do anything about it other than consummate relationships with robots, I just find it philosophically empty. Like a frat bro trying to sound more intellectual. I think a collective 4 sentences are said to you by your spouse, maybe another 3 from Codsworth, and this child that I'm asked to care about is as interactable as my real-world toaster. I can press a button to poke him, I can spin the mobile hanging above him, and then a minute later I'm running out of the house not caring about him. In comparison, Fallout 3 starts with an arguably more stylized intro, a fade in to a vacuum tube, panning out to see a radio playing the Inkspot's monolithic "I don't want to set the world on fire" inside a bus. Further panning to show the state of disrepair. Sorry to use this word again so soon, but it's the juxtaposition of the atom punk 1950s nuclear aesthetic, now dirtied, broken, surrounded by the decaying wreck of the Washington metropolitan area. It then leads into a war never changes exposition, but this one is much more of an indictment of war and the needless destruction. We then see our character be birthed. Being there from the literal beginning is much more intimate, and it definitely helps me to imprint on the character. You see your father lovingly excited for the birth of his child, before having that joy ripped away by the death of the mother. Ultimately, the mother plays no part and we're not given a chance to care about her, but it still works to give our character and their father something in common, something that, in my opinion, helps attach us to the father. We then spend the interactive tutorial literally growing as a character, spending time with our in-game father and the vault residents, seeing how the people of this world act and getting to live in the world we're going to play in, even if it's only adjacent to where we'll spend most of our time. You can choose to like Amata as a character, you could try to join the Tunnel Snakes, but the only character Fallout 3 asks you to care for is your father, and it gives you plenty of time for that to happen naturally. Fallout 3 and New Vegas let you build your character by responding with how you'd behave in situations for the GOAT in 3, or the mental connections you make with the Rorschach tests of New Vegas. Both of these either aligning the character with the player's views, or making it easier for the player to get in character. In contrast, Fallout 4 just dumps a bunch of attributes with arbitrary values in your face, expecting you to know how best to assign them. Fallout games, and other Bethesda games like the Elder Scrolls franchise, seem to have an innate ability to make you start new playthroughs with a much higher frequency than other games. And as such, you play through the intro of them a staggering amount. For a game like Fallout 3, where the intro is good, but long, it can feel like a chore if you've already played through it recently. And the Fallout 4 intro isn't as long. However, New Vegas is just character creation, and then if you want a tutorial, you have to hunt down Sunny Smiles. That means that in 2010, we already had an option to skip the tutorial and expedite the start of the playthrough, before regressing for 2015.
Malfunction in cryopod manual release override.
Oh, God.
With Fallout 3 being the first game of the franchise to forego the isometric perspective for either first or third person, in a time where gaming was less common, I feel that it makes it more acceptable to have a forced tutorial, while I also accept that it's long-winded and it kills the momentum of a second playthrough. At least in 3, I know what I'm meant to be doing in the tutorial. I've started a Fallout 4 playthrough at least 20 times, and I still have no idea what I'm meant to do to progress the tutorial and get to the visit from the Vault Tech rep. Adding on to that, because options are superficial and the world and characters seem so static, I don't find any desire to replay the game. The only incentive for me is the Steam achievements, and if that's the only reason I'm playing a game, I don't think I can review it positively. Later on I'll explain what I mean about it feeling static, but I felt like it was also worth bringing up here in the role-playing segment. As for the opinion that 4 might not even be a good game, there's quite a few points to cover. For the first hour of my playthrough, I was playing on borderless windowed mode, as I do for every game I play, and I had horrendous input lag that I'd estimate to be around 200 milliseconds or a fifth of a second. That means that from noticing an enemy to shooting, I could have as much as a half-second delay. Maybe I should have realized sooner that it was borderless causing the input lag, but after that hour, I changed to exclusive full screen, which required quitting and relaunching, just to see problem 2. Borderless had my FPS kept at 60 FPS, something I'm very used to with Bethesda games. However, exclusive full screen let my game run at 120 FPS. In any other case, that would be a huge win, giving me twice the performance. However, this is Bethesda, and they love to tie in-game physics to the FPS. I'll give a very quick rundown, but game engines tend to use either per-frame physics calculations, or they'll use delta time, which is like how the real world works. With delta time, jumping off a roof and landing on the floor will always take the same time regardless of FPS, given the same start and end point. And this was introduced in the late 90s, before the very first Fallout game was created. It was a video game standard in the early noughties, yet Bethesda refused to allow for variability in hardware or just the stresses a game will put on a system, as they're apparently married to per frame with kids on the way. This means I spent the first hour looking like an IGN reviewer, and the next hour as Usain Bolt running twice as fast, purely because of my preference for borderless over exclusive full screen. Fallout 4 was the first game to allow us to sprint, and surely you're thinking, there's no way someone could complain about being allowed to sprint, but need I remind you, this is a Bethesda game. If you make any sort of lateral movement, if you so much as consider strafing to the side to better adjust your positioning, you are forced out of sprinting. A single picometer of movement, a tiny crumb of right stepping, and you're forced back to standard walk speed. It's a small thing, yet a major annoyance for me. Another thing that's individually minor, yet collectively annoying, is the time it takes to load between zones. Between running my operating system and who knows how many programs, my SSD is capable of up to 6 gigabytes per second speed. That's fast enough to download the entire game and all of its DLC in 6 seconds. My CPU lets me render videos up to 300 frames per second, and my GPU is so overkill, I don't think I've seen a game take up even a third of its VRAM. And over an hour of gameplay, I think I spend 16% of that waiting for areas to load. I was accepting of it when I was younger because the game had to run on consoles and the wasteland of 4 is large, but through all the updates and the next-gen versions this game's been subjected to, at this point it's rather inexcusable for the game to still be so poorly made. That actually conveniently leads into another point I wasn't sure how to incorporate, so I'm happy. Bethesda games feel like they're so easily and conveniently moddable, just so the designers can buck the responsibility of fixing and improving the game off to the community modders. The fact that the response to criticism about the game is to recommend community-made fixes and improvements is honestly kinda sad. To be told that an issue I'm facing is widespread, it's well known, and Dragon Butt Sniffer 93 has coded a fix. Shouldn't it be the duty of the people that created the game to fix it? I'm thankful for the community modders and the amazing things they've been able to do with the games, but I feel like a company as large as Bethesda, a company now owned by Microsoft, it shouldn't be acceptable for them to release a buggy, broken mess and just ignore it, hoping a community member to make their own fix. Especially when that company incorporates community-made mods that require real-world money to purchase, such as the Creation Club offerings. It's almost as bad as a company offering a DLC for cosmetic horse armor that has no use or effect. Oh wait. Very conveniently, just as I sat down to start writing this script, my brother decided to get back into Fallout 4. This is second-hand information, but apparently, on his PS5, he has to play the PS4 version of the game because the PS5 version is broken and just will not work. To explain when I say that the game feels static, while playing through the game and getting footage, I felt like everything in this game was weirdly undynamic. This footage of the characters leaving, one after another in a line, waiting for the door in front of them to open and close before they can exit and let the next character stand, waiting for the door to open and close so they can exit, and so on. The enemies you fight stand in the same place, they act the same way, and coming off of a review for the Fear franchise, where NPC dynamic interaction allows for near-endless replayability, it's crazy to me that 10 years later, a company with infinitely more experience and resources can't come close to the same level of replayability. Their world is nowhere near as alive. I haven't covered all the contentious aspects of the game, such as the power dynamic being broken, the abundance of Radiant quests, and plenty others that could be mentioned, but I think I've made a good argument for why Fallout 4 isn't a good role-playing game, and maybe just not a good game itself.
Captain.